with your back?
It's bad. It's amazing.
Have you been to the doctor?
No, I put, well, there's nothing they can do really. And, when I think back about how I heard it was, I'll be 78 years old in a month. I go outside and I'm working like I'm 28 years old, which is so stupid. I can't believe that I don't think. People say, what did you do to yourself? I said, I hurt myself working outside.
You know, you're 20 years old in your head. That's the,
Amazing, amazing that I can be that stupid.
it's not stupid. It's a sign of youth, Morris.
No, it's a sign of my Ukrainian background. I'll tell you, yeah, I'll be 78 in a month. Feel my arm. This is the Ukrainian arm. Yeah, that's it's still
Baruch Hashem. You'll be how old?
78. I know. I can't believe it myself.
Kanai Nahara.
Still immature. And you know, Rabbi, I am not afraid to die. And a lot of my friends are so afraid. And I'm not afraid. I don't quite get myself. But neither was my father.
So you're like your father in that respect.
So I guess I'm like my father. I don't know if I ever told you before my father died. A week before my father died, he said he had to talk to me. I said, what? He said, very important. And he sat down with me and he gave me his funeral instructions a week before he died. And I start to cry. I'm crying, Daddy, don't do this to me. He said, stop it. He says, you'll still be here. I'm the one who's weeping. He said, I'm not crying, I'm ready. And he gave me what rabbi he wanted, what rabbi he didn't want. He had a close friend who was an Episcopalian priest. He wanted him to help, which he did. And he had a good friend who was a Catholic priest, but he predeceased my father, otherwise he would have been there too. But that was amazing.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Just one of you?
Well, he had a meeting at the library.
Ah.
So,
Okay.
going solo tonight, which
Good.
is fine.
Is he involved in the library?
Yeah, he's on the board. He gave some technical advice, I think.
That's great. I go to the library almost every day now.
Really?
Yeah, I love it.
Have enough books there for you?
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
more than enough books.
It became highly
I
technical.
go there, I'll tell you why, because I don't get all the newspapers and magazines, especially Jewish magazines that I used to get, but they get them.
Hmm.
So that's where I can sit
Oh, nice.
and read.
Undisturbed without the telephone. Without the telephone.
See, I can't go there. It doesn't help me. Okay, I do apologize. I have to stop at 9 tonight because I have, unfortunately, a meeting. And we'll have to figure out what we're going to do as Mariv gets later. I don't want to, it's going to cut into the class, so we'll figure out how we're going to handle that. We'll have to.
We're gonna start early?
Maybe we'll start earlier. We'll see if people can make that. We'll see what happens.
Bye, Eddie.
Okay. All right, so page 438, Pasuk 26, Parak 23, Pasuk 26. The Torah continues its promise to us. This is all based on our serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Torah says, Lo sihiyeh mishakela va'akara be'artzecha, that there will not be a miscarriage or a barren woman in your land.
Excuse me, Rabbi, what page?
438. Es mispar yamecha amale. The number of your days I shall fill. And this is part of the promise that went along with what came before it, right? V'avadatem, the pasuk chafhei that we did last week. V'avadatem es Hashem Elokeichem. You should serve you, the Lord your God. And if you do that, or maybe not conditional, but uveirach es lachmecha, he will bless your bread, ves memecha, and your water. V'hasirosi machala mikirbecha. And then there won't be a miscarriage or a barren woman in the land. By the way, mishakela refers to miscarriage, but akara, which is barren, refers also to a man. In other words, a man can be, quote, barren as well. A man can be sterile, right? Unable to produce offspring. So, right, so not just a woman, but there won't be a man who is unable to produce offspring as well. And es mispar yamecha amalei, the days of your life I shall fill. So this is actually, it's a tough pasuk, right? It seems to be a great pasuk, but it's actually a tough pasuk. Why?
Shouldn't Mispar Yamecha be the number of your days will be full?
Yes, the count of your days. How did they translate it in English? They translate it as the number of your days, but mispar, the count of your days. In other words, however many days you're supposed to have, whatever that count is supposed to be, amalei, I will fill it. So, the first part of this pasuk is a little bit difficult, right? Because we all know that there are women who miscarry, there are miscarriages, and we know that there are people who can't conceive. So how could it be that Hashem promises us that V'avadatam es Hashem Elokechem, that you will serve the Lord your God, and there won't be any miscarriages, there won't be any barrenness in the land? Okay, so say, all right, so in Eretz Yisrael, even in Eretz Yisrael, women miscarry. Even in Eretz Yisrael, there are people who are unable to procreate. So, what is the Torah telling us here? Does that imply that miscarrying and being unable to procreate is a punishment for not serving Hakadosh Baruch Hu?
The way they.
Is that the implication?
It sounds almost like V'haya im Shamoah, like the second pasuk of Shema Yisrael.
The second paragraph of Shema, right? Well, the second paragraph of Shema is definitively reward for listening to Hakadosh Baruch Hu, cause and effect.
Right.
And we base it on the phrase v'haya'im.
Right.
Right? What does v'haya'im mean? And it will be if. In other words, if you do this, this is what's going to happen,
But the
right?
language here is different.
Right? The language we don't have anywhere in this. We don't have anywhere in these two psukim v'haya'im or anything parallel or similar to or comparable to v'haya'im. That's the whole idea, right? That we don't have that. So if we had it, it would make it even a more difficult question.
Right.
In other words, if we had it, so that would seem to imply that if an individual has a sickness, because at the end of last week's shir we learned, right, Hashem is going to remove all the sicknesses from us. So if an individual has a sickness, or if a woman miscarries, or if a woman or a man are infertile, then that would seem to imply a punishment. Meaning that if you served Hashem, then there wouldn't be this. But the fact that you have this is an indication that you didn't serve Hashem properly. So that's one, right? If it would say v'haya'im, if we would make it conditional, that would compound the difficulties here.
Very closely, yeah.
Yeah, I know this is probably because of our jaded perspective on life, and it's very circular logic, but because we know, like you said, these things happen, therefore we know that the Peshat isn't as straightforward as you'd read Peshat, because it doesn't make any sense if you read it as Peshat. So therefore, you kind of almost impute.
You have to do the Torah.
You kind of impute on the reading that somehow, there had to be a mistake here. Yeah,
But you know what?
I agree with you, Eddie.
If we ask these questions, people before us asked the same questions. And that's why it begs for commentary in Torah Shebaal Peh. Because I'm sure the first generation who read this would also have the same questions. So
So that's why we learned last week that this is not a conditional statement. That it's not if you do this, if you serve Hashem, then all of these things will happen. That's the second paragraph of Shema. It's conditional. V'haya im shamoa tishma'u el mitzvosai. If you listen, then you'll get the rain, and if you don't listen, then okay.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is that everywhere in here and in all Tanakh that there's any sense of theodicy whatsoever, it has to be unwound and
Yeah, that's true. We
have
have right. So the truth is we have to absolutely unwind this. But we have to absolutely unwind this to try and understand what's going on here. So let's first of all look at it from a perspective that Pasuk 25, which is the which is the beginning of this section, that Pasuk 25 is not a conditional statement, right? It doesn't say V'haya im avadetem es Hashem Elokechem, that if you worship Hashem, then uveirach es lachmecha, then He will bless your land, right? There's no conditional statement, and actually, if you look at it in the English, and you'll see that they're very careful to translate it not in a conditional manner. What does the English say? You shall worship Hashem your God, and He shall bless your bread and your waters, and shall remove illness from your midst. How does the English translate it? The same way.
Right.
That this is not a conditional statement, meaning that it begins with serving Hashem. That's the first reality, that's the first step. That needs to be there. Serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The second step is when we are a nation that is serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu properly, what is going to happen?
The environment.
Right? The bread is going to be blessed. The water is going to be blessed.
The general nature
Right?
will be blessed.
Things will physically be different in the world. In other words, Hashem, because we have this relationship with Him, Hashem is responding to us differently than He would if we didn't have this relationship. So part of an approach to understand this would be to say, if you have a relationship with someone, then you're not starting out at zero. In other words, you have a relationship with someone, there's something is there already. Right? So that's the idea. In other words, if I almost like, I'm trying to think of an example that wouldn't be overly mundane, but let's say that I don't know, I sign up at a bank for something. I don't even know if this is a good example. Or let's say I go into a store to buy something, and I don't know the owner. The owner doesn't know me, and I say I want to buy it on credit. So in all likelihood, what is the owner going to do?
No.
He's not going to sell it to me on credit, okay? But let's say I go into the store and I buy it something with money, and then the second time I pay for it, and I already have a relationship with the owner of the store, and now I go in and I want to buy something on credit. I already have a relationship that I'm dealing with, and because I have this relationship that I'm dealing with, so there's a good chance that he'll react to me differently than if there had not been a relationship.
Right, okay.
So, va'avadatem es Hashem Elokechem. That's the relationship. You are going to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu when you come into the land and you destroy the Avodah Zarah of the inhabitants of the land, and you don't worship their Avodah Zarah. You are going to worship me. That's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu says. You are going to worship me. And we're going to have a close relationship. And in the normal course of events of having a close relationship, what's going to happen? So I'm going to bless the water, and I'm going to bless the bread, and I'm going to make sure there's no sickness, and women are not going to miscarry, and nobody's going to be barren. That's what will happen. As a normal reflection of this relationship that you and I have, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right?
Okay, so by implication, you're saying that the land of Israel is so special that it can't tolerate, I'm doing it inversely, any kind of misbehavior because any kind of blessing won't stick.
Where you're looking at, right, you're looking at it the other way around.
Right. So when you do things in Eretz Israel, that are not great, it has much more input on the land, the Sviva, than if you do.
So that's an interesting observation. I mean,
from this pasuk, I'm inverting it.
I understand that. I mean, we do have a belief that, this goes back to the very first Rashi in Chumash. We do have a belief that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will take the land away from individuals who don't deserve to live there. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu has done that. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to do that after the 40-year journey in the desert. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to do that. He's going to take the land away from the 7 nations who live there, and he's going to give it to the Jews. Mm-hmm. And the first Rashi in Chumash makes a point of saying that why do we have a whole section of Chumash that talks about, all of Bereshis that talks about the creation of the world? Why do we have that? So Rashi says we have it to teach us that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the boss of the world, right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one who controls everything. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu can take away Eretz Yisrael from whom he wants and give it to whom he wants. So if the inhabitants of the land don't deserve to live there, so it's obviously not going to happen right away. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's not like somebody's Mechal Shabbos in Israel, and the next thing you know, they're booted out. Right, but it's when the society, when the tone of society reaches a particular low, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu kicks them out of the land.
So the land itself can't tolerate.
Right. In fact, the language is that the land will vomit you out. Right. That's the expression which is used. So yes, it's absolutely true. But this pasuk is not even going in. This pasuk is stopping even before that. This pasuk is saying the natural result of you going into the land and witnessing the miraculous conquering of the land, and you're making the effort to destroy any avodah zarah which is there, and you're not getting sucked into the culture that was there, and you're recognizing my rulership over the land. What's going to happen as a natural result of that? The land is going to give its blessings, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu built blessings into this land.
It sounds almost post-apocalyptic, like in the Messianic era, or if everything worked perfectly and you got in there and you did everything right and you conquered and this and that, you'd almost be in a Messianic utopia and everything's right, kind of.
Yes. Right, theoretically, you're right, and maybe that's what this section is forecasting was supposed to happen. Mm-hmm. That remember we're way before the Meraglim, right? We haven't, we were supposed to go right from Har Sinai into the land of Israel. That's what was supposed to happen, and Moshe Rabbeinu was supposed to go in with us. Right, we were supposed to go in, and then the events of history would have been much different. If Moshe Rabbeinu had come into Eretz Yisrael and built the Beis Hamikdash, the Beis Hamikdash never would have been destroyed. So for whatever reason, that didn't happen. But at this point, what's being described here is this ideal forecast for what could be, right? What Hashem wanted from us, to go into the land, to destroy the Avodah Zarah, to defeat the inhabitants, and to create that relationship with him. A relationship with him that will result in benefits. Or what do they call it? Was it a relationship with benefits? Right? So this would be a relationship with benefits. Right? What are the benefits? The benefits are Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to bless the bread, and he's going to bless the water. There's not going to be any miscarriages, and there's not going to be any barrenness.
So the ecology would be good and would lead to health.
Correct. Right? So in other words, it becomes a natural flow of events. When a Kadosh Baruch Hu blesses the land, and the land produces vegetation. The land produces crops. Those crops and vegetation will be an outgrowth of the blessing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has invested in the land. And when we eat those things, we will be eating the growth of that blessing, right? That will be beneficial to us. And, so on and so forth. As you go down the line, right? We have the bread. The bread comes from the wheat, which grows from the ground. The ground is blessed because of our relationship with the HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The ground is blessed, meaning that the wheat will be blessed, meaning that the bread will be blessed. The ground is blessed, so the water that flows, in the ground will be blessed. Now, what does it mean, blessed? So one interpretation of blessed means plenty, ample. There will be plenty for all of the people who live there. But another implication of blessed, and this is what we saw last week, another implication of blessed is that it will be healthier for us. And if it's healthier for us, then all of these successive health benefits will occur, right? That there won't be barrenness and there won't be miscarriages. And so is a miscarriage necessarily a sign is it a sign of punishment? No, not at all. Is a miscarriage a sign that you haven't worshiped God properly and therefore He is punishing you? No. Is a miscarriage a sign that because we don't have the relationship as a nation with God that is an ideal relationship, that the blessing that God promises isn't in the land, it's not in the outgrowth of the land, it's not in the environment, and accordingly, it's not in us. And as a result of that blessing not being within us, all kinds of health issues occur. We get sick. We miscarry. We, the royal we, right? We get sick. Women miscarry. Men and women are unable to conceive. We throw our backs out. Whatever it is. In other words, because we don't have this ideal relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, His blessing is not found in nature. And when that blessing is not found in nature, so there are all kinds of other things in nature that impact on us. So that's really the way in which we need to understand this pasuk. The idea of es mispar yamecha amalei, that I will fill the count or the number of your days, is to be understood in a very interesting way. That if we say that there will not be any women who miscarry, so meaning clearly they will give birth to healthy children. That's the first part of the promise, right? The first part of the journey is giving birth, is being born healthy. That's the first part of the journey. But even if a child is born healthy, what can happen? So certainly along the way, the child can contract illness or disease, and that child's life can be cut short. Maybe cut short of 60, cut short of 70, cut short of 100, who knows? But not live out the number of your days, right? Not live out the number of your days. So it's interesting. What's the number of a person's days?
120?
Well, we get 100. Where does 120 come from? Moshe Rabbeinu lived 120 years. So we say, you should live 120 like Moshe Rabbeinu.
Everyone's got a preordained number.
Right? Everyone has a preordained number of days. It's very interesting. What do we say? We say in Tehillim, Shivim Shana. What is the expression?
Which one?
Great.
The expression of Shivim Shana. Yemei Shenoseinu Bahem Shivim Shana. This is Perek Tzadi in Tehillim. The David HaMelech writes, the days of the years of your life, or the days of your years, should be Shivim Shana, 70 years. V'im bigvuros, and with exceptional strength, 80 years. 80 years. So the Baal HaTurim has a very interesting comment. The Baal HaTurim says, what's the gematria of Amalei?
Aleph.
Aleph is 1, Mem is 40. Lamed is 30. That's 71, right? Right, 71. And Aleph at the end is another one. That's 72. Says the Balaturim that this is a remez. You take the year that you're born, right? That year in which you're born doesn't count. That's not a full year. The year in which you die doesn't count. That's not a full year. So, right? Yemei shenosenu bahem shivim shana. That what is this? Es mispar yamecha amalei. Meaning that when a Kadosh Baruch Hu fills the count of our days, the days or the count of the years is 70 years. That the average lifespan is supposed to be 70 years. Right? What?
An autobiographical.
By David HaMelech.
David
Yeah.
HaMelech was given 70 years from Adam HaRishon.
Correct.
I'm overdue.
No, Mars, you're not overdue because the pasuk says ve'im bigvuros
Right.
shmonim shana. That if you're extraordinarily strong, if you're a gibor, right? A gibor is a person hakovesh es yitzro, who's able to conquer his passions and his drives. That's what a gibor is, right? That's your Hungarian background, right? Ukrainian. I'm sorry, excuse me, Ukrainian background.
I'll never tell him.
Right? Ve'im bigvuros, Mars, you have that gvuros. So shmonim shana, 80 years. So you're a spring chicken.
Come around a second time.
You still have time to go. Right? You still have time to go. But back to what, I mean, that's the Balaturim, very interesting. But regardless of that, what Eddie said is a correctly held belief that no one really knows the number of his or her days. Right? A Kadosh Baruch Hu, when a person is born, assigns this person a number of days. Whatever that number is, Kadosh Baruch Hu assigns this person a number of days. It doesn't mean that the person is going to live to that number of days. Whereas it is possible that the person will die before that number of days is reached. It depends on how life unfolds, what kind of relationship this person has with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. What's the society in which this person is living? What's the environment in which this person is living? Right? But what HaKadosh Baruch Hu promises us is that if we do have this relationship with Him, then es mispar yamecha amalei. Then, if a person passes away young, we say HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that was what HaKadosh Baruch Hu's assigned number of years to him was. But if we live in a society or we live among a people where we don't have that relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we don't know what the years are. We don't know if a person dies. Did he die short of his number of years, or was that the number of years that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave him? But if you look, interestingly, the English quotes the Sforno. The Sforno has a beautiful comment, and the Sforno says that what's the benefit of the number of your days being filled? So the Sforno says, when you have people around who are older, so you can benefit from their wisdom and experience. Our society probably believes just the other way, right? Our society probably believes that if you're younger, you're more vital, you're more, you're more valuable. But if you're older, so then you don't have as much value. But that's obviously not our perspective. Our perspective is that the older you are, the more experience you have and the more wisdom you have. And therefore, length of days is a blessing because you'll be able to share that.
But yet the experience doesn't help you because it's Hashem who's setting that date, not you.
No, that experience doesn't help you, but it helps others. In other words, you can be a guide for others. You can be a source of teaching for others. You can be, you can help other people.
Okay.
That's the idea of this. There's another. The Sforno, the language that he uses is a little bit different than the English here, but he says, "Ba'ofen shetuchlu lilamed es b'nechem," that that God will fulfill the number of your days in a way so that you will be able to teach your children. Now, so here's something very interesting. In other words, at what point do children start to really learn from their parents? So on one level, you say that they're always learning from their parents, right? From the time that they're little. But on another level, they don't start really learning from their parents until they get older. The kids get a little bit older, they get a little bit more mature, and now all of a sudden, right? What was Mark Twain's famous line? I don't remember it, but along the lines that I was amazed how much my father learned, and, right? So, but that's the idea that according to the deeper meaning, what the Sforno is saying here, not only will you live long enough to teach your children and your grandchildren, but life will be such that you will be able to teach your children and your grandchildren. They will appreciate what you have to offer them. Okay. So that's the way in which the Sforno understands this. Rav Chaim Paltiel asks an interesting question. And he says, wait a second. The Gemara in Maseches Moed Katan makes the following statement. The Gemara says, Chaye Bane Mizone Lo Bizachusa Talia. What does Chaye mean? Person's life. Bane, person's children. Umizone, person's food, is lo bizachusa talia. What does that mean?
Not the merit of.
Not determined by your merit, meaning whatever you are going to do is not going to determine chaye, banai, or mizonai. In other words, these things are going to be determined by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to determine your children, as Kadosh Baruch, whether you have children, how many children you have. That's what a Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to do. He's going to make that determination. It doesn't matter. It's not based on your schus. You might be not deserving and have lots of children. You might be very deserving and not have. There's a Kadosh Baruch Hu makes that decision. The same by your muzzle, the same by your food, and actually the same by the years of your life. That's on the one hand, says Reb Chaim Paltiel. On the other hand, we see that we have a principle that the Gemara says in Masechet Shabbos, Ein Mazal LiYisrael. What does it mean, Ein Mazal LiYisrael? Doesn't mean the Jewish people have no luck. What does it mean? Right, that we're not under the control of the planets. In other words, that we are the ones who control what happens to us, not how a Kadosh Baruch Hu arranges the world so that these forces, right. So Ein Mazal Yisrael. So Reb Chaim Paltiel says, I'm not sure how to understand this pasuk. In other words, on the one hand, these things are not dependent on a schus. So if they're not dependent on schus, right, what's going on here? What is the pasuk telling me? On the other hand, right, schus certainly does play a role because Ein Mazal Yisrael. We know that things are controlled based on how we respond, how we interact. So Rav Chaim Paltiel sort of leaves it with a tzarich iyun as to how to interpret this section. Are these things based on our merit, or are they determined by HaKadosh Baruch Hu independent of our merit? So he leaves it as a tzarich iyun that way. But so that's the idea here. The best way to understand this is if we understand it in a non-conditional way. Let's go on to the next pasuk. Pasuk 27. Pasuk 27 says, Es emasi ashalach lefanecha. I will send my fear, right? My fear. Ema is right. Fear, or maybe terror or dread is a better word. The English translates it as fear, right? Right. I will send my fear before you. V'hamosi es kol ha'am, and I will confound. I'll confuse all of the people. In other words, the people who are living in the place asher tavo bahem, where you're going to come, meaning that this is not just going to be a pure military victory. This is going to be one with psychological warfare as well. That there's going to be this unattributable source of terror that's going to strike the hearts of the people who are living in Eretz Yisrael. That they're going to experience this sense of dread. That's part of the way in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu wins, the battle, wins the war, right? Fights the battle for us by making the enemy fearful of what's coming. So that's what the pasuk says. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will do. Es emasi ashalach lefanecha v'hamosi es kol ha'am asher tavo bahem v'nasati es kol oyevecha elecha oref. And what happens? I will give all of your enemies against you, all of the enemies who are against you. I will give you the back of their necks. Meaning, what's going to happen? They're going to run away. Right? Kadosh Baruch Hu says, I am going to... How is a Kadosh Baruch Hu going to intervene? He's not sending tanks. He's not sending airplanes. Right? What's a Kadosh Baruch Hu doing? He is terrorizing the people who live there, placing fear in their hearts, and they are going to run away from the Jews who are coming into the land. They're going to run away from the Jews who are coming into the land.
Now, if they accepted, the fact that they wouldn't have Silim and they could stay, right? Is that the condition?
They have to accept Sheva Mitzvot.
Yeah.
If they accept Sheva Mitzvos B'nai Noach, then they can stay there. They have the status then of a Ger Toshav. They have certain rights and privileges as a Ger Toshav, right? Correct. But that's only if they accept Sheva Mitzvos B'nai Noach. Okay. But so that's the psychological part of the battle that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to wage for us. But there's also going to be an infantry. Who's the infantry?
The Sirah.
So the next pasuk says, not only that, but v'shalachti es hatzirah lefanecha. What is the tzirah? Right. Well, let's see. Look at Rashi. Rashi says tzirah is min sheretz ha'of. What is it?
Flying bug.
It's a flying winged sheretz, right?
Wasp or...
Well, yeah, the English translates it as hornet swarm, right? But Rashi continues, "V'hayisa makeh osam be'enehem." What happens? These bugs fly into their eyes. Umatila bahem eres, and inject poison into them. Vehem mesim, and what's going to happen? They're going to die. All right. So whatever kind of insect this is, I don't know is that how a hornet works? I don't know. Right? But whatever kind of insect this is, whatever this tzirah is, it is going to literally attack the people who are living in the land of Israel physically.
If you see somebody react to like a bee sting or
Well, only somebody who's allergic.
hornet sting, well, even allergy minus,
Very painful.
they go into shock and their airways are constricted.
Why the eyes?
Right, but that's if they are. I mean, if they're not allergic, pretty much they're okay, right? Okay, so what about this tzira? And here we're going to touch on something that Tina mentioned earlier. Rashi continues and says, "V'hatzira lo avra es hayarden." That this swarm of flying insects, whatever it was, did not cross over the Yarden. Why? Probably because of the Kiddush of Eretz Yisrael. In other words, it would not, that the Kiddush of Eretz Yisrael was too great to allow these swarming shiratzim to cross over the boundary, to cross over the Yarden into Eretz Yisrael. That's very. If it didn't go into Eretz Yisrael, if it didn't cross the Yarden, who was it dealing with? Says Rashi, "V'hachiti v'hakinaani, heim Eretz Sichon v'Og." Right? Where was the land of Sichon and Og? Where was it?
Russia.
It was in the plain of Moab, right? Before crossing the Jordan River. Right, that was the territory of Sichon and Og. And that's, Bnei Yisrael had to wage war and conquer the Chiti and the Kenani who lived in that area as well. And that's why Rashi says, "V'hachiti v'hakanani heim eretz Sichon va'og lefichach mikol zayin umos lo mana kan ella elu." Right? What's included here in this count? Just the Chiti and the Kenani, because they were the ones who lived in Eretz Sichon va'og. And Rashi continues, and Rashi says, V'choi af al pi shehu ma'avir hayardein v'hala shanu rabosenu b'maseches sota al sfas hayardein amda v'zarka bahem mara. Right? This other plague, this choi, what happened here? It stood on the banks of the Yarden and spewed venom or whatever against those who were on the other side. So it seems that the kedusha of the land of Israel was such that it actually would not allow these agents of Hashem's war into it because of the kedusha of the land.
This sirah, is it around today, or is it something that just is for that period?
I don't know if tzira.
In other words,
If it's a hornet, they're around. Yellow jacket.
true, but they don't have the power to spew. They need contact with someone. You know? So this almost sounds like that it was the sirah, maybe I'm misinterpreting.
The sirah was created just for this.
At the beginning of creation and program to react this way at this time.
Could be.
It could be, like the
Could be.
donkey.
I mean, again, I had this issue this morning. I was teaching this morning about the para aduma and the question of what is a zov, right? A zov,
It's an emission.
we call it hyssop, right? A zov is hyssop, but is the hyssop tree, the hyssop bush of today, is that the same a zov
Right.
that was in the days of Chumash, or are we referring to a completely different, bush and everything? So we don't really have those definitive answers. I don't know if tzira appears anywhere else. To do a search in the Gemara to see. I don't know. It's a good question. Okay, we'll have to stop here for tonight. I apologize,
Okay.
but thank you, and we'll figure out what to do when it comes to the davening getting a little bit